mites. They attack hops.
So we rely very, very heavily on chemical application of fungicides.
You will bring in new pests and diseases.
The technology which really starts to help us in this space is genomics. The introduction of MGI sequencing tools has really helped democratise sequencing for small teams like myself.
I'm a viticulturist here in Central Otago, and we are lucky enough to farm about 30 vineyards. The New Zealand wine industry currently is 7th in our export earnings. We've just breached $2.1 billion of export earnings. I think some of the biggest challenges that we face in the viticulture wine industry is actually precision. I can see further and further that the wine consumers of the world will be wanting to know exactly what we're spraying.
We have a number of the common diseases and pest species which affect production. We rely very, very heavily on chemical application of fungicides in particular to control powdery and downy mildew and botrytis.
We definitely have problems with mites, which they attack hops. We know chemicals are not very nice to plants, and in the long term, definitely looking into genomics and making varieties resistant is probably the right way to go.
Well, the technology which really starts to help us in this space is genomics, is to breed plants that are better adapted to resisting these diseases. So our role here is to look at ways of not only looking at genetic improvement through stimulating our vines to generate new genetic variants, but also to use biotechnological approaches that are not genetically modified. We and others across the world have identified a number of particular targets which, if they altered in terms of how they behave within the plant, the grape plant itself, we can lead to resistance, for example, to powdery mildew. And so we're deploying that at the moment. We have, with Brigato, produced a number of Pinot Noir genomes and Sauvignon Blanc genomes that we're now starting to interrogate to understand how these clones differ and whether we have an ability within those clones to identify differences which will lead to production eventually of a more tolerant vine. So genomics has the potential to contribute to improving the quality of the fruit, so that outcomes for our growers in numbers of different ways. We can, for example, aside from monitoring progression of disease in a vineyard, we can start to look at soil health in a more general context. Do we have the ability to manipulate the soils to improve not only the health of the vine in terms of how it grows, but also the quality of the fruit that's produced? Over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, previously we've been using international sequence providers to take our samples and do the sequencing and deliver that data back to us. Those options are not that cost effective, so the opportunity came 2 or 3 years ago to trial the MGI DMB-Seq G400. The introduction of MGI sequencing tools has really helped democratise sequencing for small teams like myself. The cost of that sequencing is highly competitive, in particular with the new release of the Q40 chemistry. We're looking at the moment, we can process maybe 200 samples in a fortnight. We're looking in the near future to move that to 50,000 samples a year. We can't do that without MGI's support. What I'd like to see for genomics technology in agriculture is that we can democratise that approach into farmers' hands directly, so that they have the ability to identify diseases to increase their profitability, which then helps the country generate income and basically drive the economy forward.
I see many opportunities to breed varieties which they're gonna provide good flavor for breweries, make hop growing pests and diseases free, which is gonna reduce the chemicals and it's gonna make high yield.
We're very excited by some new genetics coming out about vines that won't require spraying. The idea of becoming a lazy grape grower has great appeal to me.